Hola clase, en la lección de hoy vamos a aprender sobre los verbos reflexivos. Hi guys, today we are going to learn about reflexive verbs. I have attached the notes that accompany this presentation. Please be sure to use your notes and fill them in as you watch the video. So up until now you have learned about present tense verbs and some irregular verbs. Today we are going to learn about reflexive verbs in the present tense. Let's take a look. So what are reflexive verbs? Reflexive verbs are verbs that are used to indicate that the subject is both the giver and the receiver of the action, meaning that you are doing something to yourself. You're dressing yourself, you're giving yourself a bath, right? Here's an example. The boy dresses himself. Okay? In this sentence, who is dressing themselves is the boy. The boy would be the subject of the sentence. All right, and what is the boy doing? The boy is dressing himself. So the boy is both doing the dressing and receiving the dressing. Therefore, dressing is a reflective verb, okay? Which in Spanish will be vestirse, to dress yourself. All right, so in order to use reflexive verbs, there are two parts. You need a reflexive pronoun and an infinitive verb. Okay, in this case, the verb is lavarse. Okay, lavarse is to wash yourself. Okay, wash your hands, wash your face. Lavarse la cara, lavarse las manos. All right, right. So let's dissect this verb. Right, the verb itself, infinitive, is lavar. It's an AR ending verb. And the pronoun is se, which makes it a reflexive pronoun. Okay, we saw some of these verbs when we were working with our vocabulary for the chapter. One of the verbs that we saw was bañarse. Bañarse means to bathe yourself. Okay, the infinitive verb is bañar, and se is the reflexive pronoun for that verb. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Cepillarse is to brush yourself, whether it is your teeth or your hair. Cepillarse. Cepillar is the verb infinitive, is an AR verb, and se is the reflexive pronoun of that verb. Okay, another one that we saw in the vocabulary list for this chapter is makijarse. Maquillar is the infinitive verb. It's an AR verb, and se again is the reflexive pronoun for that verb. Okay, these were just some of the examples of the many we saw in the vocabulary list for this chapter. Now let's take a look. In English, the reflexive pronouns are often expressed with self and selves. Okay, I showered myself, or you showered yourself. Okay, the boys washed themselves. The boys washed their hands or washed their hands. Okay, sometimes the self and selves sound strange in English, so we omit them. We don't use them. Okay. For example, like putting makeup on, we can say she puts makeup on. We don't necessarily say she puts makeup on herself. Right now, let's take a look at the reflexive pronouns in Spanish. First, we'll look at the reflexive pronouns in English, which are myself, yourself, himself, herself, yourselves, and themselves, or ourselves. Okay, let's look at the Spanish equivalents. All right, myself will be me, yourself will be te, right? Yourself, himself, and herself will be se. Just take a note that yourself in this manner in third person, we're talking about the usted version of yourself. Okay. Then we have ourselves, which is nos. Then we have yourselves in Spain, which is os. And then we have yourselves, themselves which is se. In this case, it will be yourselves, will be ustedes. It's very important to note that both third person, singular and plural, as well as masculine and feminine, is just one reflexive pronoun, which is se. Right, so now that we have learned the subject pronouns, the reflexive pronouns for reflexive verbs, let's take a look at some example and see how we conjugate reflexive verbs. All right, so how do we conjugate reflexive verbs? Let's take a look at this verb, lavar. Lavarse means to wash yourself. Okay, lavar is the infinitive verb. All right, it's an AR verb. Se is the reflexive pronoun of that verb. We're going to take the verb, an AR verb. Remember our verb endings, present tense verb endings for AR verbs, which are o, as, a, amos, ais, and an. All right, so first person singular, lavo, lavas, lava, lavamos, lavais, lavan. Right, so we dissect the verb, the reflexive verb, and we take just the infinitive and change the endings to the conjugated present tense endings. All right, then we add the reflexive pronoun. So now that reflexive pronoun se at the end of the verb will become me lavo, te lavas, se lava, nos lavamos, os laváis, se lavan. All right, so with reflexive verbs, it is important to note that you're changing the pronoun along with the verb itself. All right, let's take a look at some sentence examples, right? Notice the placement of the reflexive pronouns in Spanish. This is Sue. Sue is bathing herself. Sue bathes herself is the sentence. How do we translate the sentence using the reflexive verb and pronoun? Let's use the reflexive pronoun first. Herself. Okay, the reflexive pronoun herself will be se because you're talking about a third person singular. Sue is the subject, and what is she doing? She's bathing herself. Sue se baña. Okay? Okay, let's take a look at a second example. This is Joe. Joe shaves himself. Right? Joe is third person singular, so we use a third person singular reflexive pronoun, which is se. Okay, Joe is the subject and he is shaving himself. Joe se afeita. Okay, and a third example. Anna is putting makeup on. Anna puts makeup on herself. Reflexive pronoun, third person again, is se. The person singular is se. Ana se maquilla. Ana is the subject. Reflexive pronoun se. And the verb maquilla. Alright guys, this concludes our lesson for reflexive verbs. Now let's practice together. Adios.